Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. And I'm just going to mute Emily's phone there. There you go. Yeah, so again, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me today for one of our Q&A Zoom meetings here. We're looking at lesson 2, and we're going to really focus on our base plan creation, and then we'll take a look at any other questions people might have. But this is an important step in the design process, and the more sort of effort and energy you put into your base plan, at least in some regards, the better, well, the easier it's going to be in terms of future portions of the course here. So let us take a look. I'm just going to share my screen, and we'll take a look at what there we go. So we're just looking at lesson 2 here. And yeah, the base plan. So this is where we want to, presumably we've already chosen our project sites. And what we want to do now is document those, right? So a base plan is really just a scaled snapshot of your project site as it is today. So that's a helpful thing to remember as you're going through this. And there's a number, I've got a couple examples I'm going to show you today, along with some student examples. I'll just get that template file going here. There we go. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but it can be tricky. It's just really based on what information you have. So if your project site is heavily wooded, then it's obviously a little trickier for Google Earth images to reveal what's going on, under the canopy there. So it can be a little harder to map, but for the most part, people's project sites are at least going to have some visibility for Google Earth. So let's take a look at where we are going with this. So again, we really want to focus on the permaculture design process here, and we're not even though we have to focus on some graphics and some graphics tools here, we really want to focus on the big picture, which is the design process. And you'll probably find if you go on to do any more design work that your graphics or your presentation is going to change probably with or evolve with every design you do. And that's certainly been the case for my wife and myself over the years, and continues to do so. So you try and tweak it a little bit more, and it's just all about visualization and doing your best to depict that. So a good start for a lot of you is going to be finding a Google Earth image and capturing that, and then including that in part of your base plan, and using that to try and well, as a starting point. It can be quite useful to trace over. We don't personally use Google Earth in our work very much, certainly not in any design work, but we do a very similar thing where we could potentially have a drone survey done and utilize that. So it's really the same process. It's just typically the drone survey will be more accurate. And Google Earth is not the most accurate tool out there, but it's free and everybody has access to it. So it definitely makes sense in the course here to utilize it. And it is a useful communication tool. We use it quite a bit to communicate ideas, but again, it's a little bit rough in terms of the design process itself. So let's see some of the items that we want to include. So with let's just go to the template file here, 2 seconds. With every design sheet that you produce, what we want to make sure is you include a title block. So in this case, we have one at the bottom. In this case, it's the bottom right-hand corner, and it's giving us similar information. We want to know about the project name, the address, your name is here, the date, and it's really helpful to have the coordinates, Google Earth coordinates, and the approximate area, as well as some rough, dimensions, length and width. And those just have to be, fairly rough. But the big thing is including a scale bar. So there are a number of tutorials within the template file that show you how to achieve that, how to create a meaningful scale bar. But let me show you one of the easiest ways. I'll just get Google Earth fired up here. It takes a minute to load. And so, yeah, these template files are very helpful that way. They give you a little bit of a structure to start with here. And you do have a legend. So if you want to place your property boundary and you want it to be a dashed red line, you've got, again, all of that set up in the legend. So if we look at some of the examples here, we can sort of pinpoint some of the key information that we want you to search out. So obviously we want the structures or the buildings placed on your drawing. In this case, this student has included the road outside the property boundary and even a couple of neighboring properties. And that is really useful in terms of getting a good idea of context. So I would encourage you to do that if it fits with what you're doing. And we have a number of different overhead, these look like overhead services coming in. Yeah, these are utility poles. So we know where the electrical or the telephone or cable or whatever internet is coming into the property. Ideally, we want to know about your water source. So if you have a water line coming in or you have sewer going out, that's something you want to try and document. And sometimes you'll have your own well. So we'd want to locate where the well is and or septic field. So here in this case, we have a septic tank right down here. Let me just get my highlight tool. Use that. So yeah, right here, it's a septic tank. Now, in a perfect world, we'd also show the field. And there's also a tank here, it looks like. So maybe these two tanks share a single field. I don't know. But that would be something to include. You certainly, typically it'll be downhill, but sometimes these are pumped into a field. So the field may be up over here. And that is important to know. We certainly don't want to be creating any landscape features above those or putting them at risk at all. So that's something to keep in mind. And we're shown here some of the major elements on this this person's project site. So you have a road coming in. You have looks like some rock retaining here and a step. We're shown the actual roof lines and where the water goes and some of the downspout locations. And that'll become really helpful when we get to lesson 5 and we start to dive into our water layer, which is an exciting one. So it does look like this property has a drilled well. I don't spot it. Or at least that's in the legend here. So it may or may not be. Oh, looks like it's right here, right by the house, which is unusual. Yeah, so those are a few things. And then we have significant trees or vegetation, right? So this person has identified hedge and some trees here. And if you don't know what the plants are, not to worry. You can just simplify this by using deciduous or coniferous trees. That's a good start. Okay. And the whole plant ID and knowing your plants is sort of a lifelong journey. And you know, if you're at the beginning of that and you're unsure, try not to worry too much about it. Okay, so this is a great base plan. It shows us also how water is moving on the site and the all-important contour data. So this is something that can be a little bit tricky to find. I can show you today one method of finding it. Often if you go on to your local interactive map of your area, let's say you're living in Portland and you just Google Portland interactive map, you will get this ArcGIS sort of platform that has various layers, and you can zoom into your property and you will find most likely that you have some contour data that you could turn on and take a screenshot of that. So that's something, one place to find it. Now, often these municipalities or cities or areas, the contour information may be, not as refined as you want. So typically in an urban spot or not even urban, but even a rural area like this, having 1 or 2 foot contours is great. So this has quite a bit of slope to it. So this person has 2 foot contours. If your site's a little bit flatter, 1 foot would be great. Yeah, that gives everybody a little bit of an idea of what this may look like. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about color. You can colorize your base map to some level, and it does tell us quite a bit. So within this area, looks like there's mixed forest. So that's helpful to know. And that's one way of depicting a large wooded area rather than individual trees. So that's an option for people. All right, sorry, I haven't had my chat on here. So I see there's three questions there. So let me get that on. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so Derek has a question or a comment here. USGS has a national map. Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of really good resources in the US. Again, I think what you'll find, and I'm not positive with the USGS, but it may be 10-foot contours, it may be 5 foot. So that's where it has a little bit of a shortfall. If you're looking at large land bases, that'd be really good. If you are looking at a very small space, like an urban lot, it may be less helpful. And Derek, thank you very much for putting the link in there. That's great. So I hope people will save that if that appeals to them. Excellent. So you're on 1/3 an acre with 10-meter contours. You got LiDAR. Yeah, good for you. That's one of the things we'll show you today. So let's just touch on that, because I think that's a challenge a lot of people have, is finding contour data. And it can be really easy or it can be really difficult. So when we get to lesson 5, we definitely want to have that information. And one of the ways we can do that, if you are running into any challenges, is using this site here, Contour Map Creator. Now, it's not horribly accurate. I would never use this for professional work, but for this class, it's great because we can all access it. And we're going to go through these exercises. And that's really what we want to do, is work on the design end of this. So let's just put in where I live, and we'll just show you. I'll just give you a demonstration how to grab some contours. So one thing you want to do is just like Google Earth, when you start zooming in and zooming out, you get into a perspective view. So make sure that you click this little button here, the tilt, and you'll go back to being directly overhead. And what we do is we go to the plot options, and we are going to be in foot units, and we want consistent intervals. So maybe here we're going to do 1 foot intervals. Okay. And then it's pretty simple. All we do is hit top left and top bottom of where we want to have our data, and then we can move that around if we want. There we go. So this is the box that we are going to get data from. So once we have it all set up and our options are selected, we just hit the Get Data button, and boom, we have our contours, and we have a legend here. So it looks like this looks pretty busy. It's pretty hard to get a lot from that. So I'm going to change this to 2 foot, and then I'm just going to ask it to redraw. So that's a little bit better. So if we had, let's say this was our project site. And let's say, and I wouldn't use orange for a project boundary. I'm just using that for this demo. Let's say that was our project site. That's great. We can take a screenshot of this, and we can use that to trace these. And we know these are every 2 foot, right? 2 foot intervals. And we know blue is the lowest, and these red and orange, yellow, orange, and red are higher elevations. So this is a really helpful start. We know this is the low point and this is the high point in the landscape. So that's one way that you can grab some contour data here. Sorry, just trying to get rid of those lines. There we go. Yeah, so again, this isn't very accurate, but if you're in a pinch, it's a great one to have. Okay. And what I will do, I'll just show you, we're going to stop share here and switch to Google Earth. And let's see here what we're going to do. Okay. So you'll see here, we have contours, and that is something that we grabbed from some LiDAR data and imported because we were doing a project on a very large piece of this island here. But one of the things I wanted to show you was if you're looking at Google Earth, and as we zoom in, it typically shoves us into this perspective view. Well, here we go. Got a project site there. So ideally, when we're looking to use this for a base map, what we want to do is make sure we have a 2D overhead view. So when you get positioned roughly where you want it, just tap the U key on the keyboard, and you'll get a little bit closer. So something like that works well. And then if you tap the N key, you're going to go north up. Okay, so and that gets confirmed here. So you can see there's a scale bar down at the bottom left, and that's in one of the references that I have. So I've always got a scale bar showing. If yours isn't, no worries. All you have to do is go up to the print button here, and you hit print, and you will have a scale bar generated in the bottom corner. So if you took a screenshot of this, you have that scale bar in place, so that's handy. And let's see here. I just want to, since we're here, I'll show you. I think it was Derek was mentioning LiDAR, and that's something we definitely utilize when we can. No, don't want that one. Sorry about that. Just got to go find. All right. So this was a project that we partially completed, and the white is the project site boundary. And we were able to get a number of different sources here. Oh, oh no, that's a different map. There we go. So we're really lucky in BC, Canada, where we have a LiDAR data portal, and we can download this data, and using other software, convert it into something usable. So here we have sort of a relief map, and then we were able to create a contour map here as well. So this was a site where our let's see here, all kinds of things going on. This was a site where our clients wanted to save as much cost as possible. So we didn't do a drone survey. We grabbed LiDAR data. The site was pretty open. And with that, we can do a slope analysis. And on the left here is our legend. So you can see it's in an agricultural area, so it's pretty flat. But it does have some water running through here, and this drainage goes out to a river right here. So these are fascinating. I do love the mapping end of the design work. So that is just thought I'd show you that. I don't think you're going to be really worried about getting into that in this course. Okay, Marvin's got a question here, and Derek as well. Okay. Property boundary industry standard, I would say, is red, Derek, and it can be dashed or solid. If you've been using orange, I mean, that's fine. That's totally up to you. So no problem there. I wouldn't use something like yellow. Like, I'd stay away from that. It's hard to see, and often it's used for gas lines too, or at least it can be. Marvin's got a question here. Can you show converting the scale bar from Google Map to the design site scale bar? Okay, well, let's turn this off. Let's say we are trying to capture this. So I would take a screenshot, and I don't know if you're able to see this, but I'm just basically taking a screenshot of that image. So if we stop share on that and we go back to trying to find it, there we are. Okay, I don't think this is I'll just make a copy of this so I can. All right. So if this was my template file, and there we go. Now I don't use this software very much, so you'll have to bear with me. Okay. So if that's where I want to stick my image, I would just paste it in, and I would, well, it seems to have gone in the wrong, no, I got the right place here. So I'm just going to resize it, and just as a note of caution, you always want to resize in the corners in order for the proportion to stay the same. So let's say we have that. That looks pretty good. Then all we need to do, Marvin, is just draw a line that matches that Google Earth line, the Google Earth scale. And this is our 10 meter scale that we could start to play with. Yeah, sorry about this. I am, don't want to do that. This isn't my tool of choice normally. No. That's basically our 10 meter line. Now, I don't know if you can even see it there. Make it a little bit bigger. I'll try again. So yeah, we're just, even if you were to leave it like this, let's make this something I can see. There we go. So there you go. There's 10 meters, and then you can, or no, sorry, that's 100 meters. You can leave that in this portion of your drawing, or you can drag it down below here. And typically, it's a good idea to put uprights on each end, and then you could divide this down as well if you wanted to. So you could split it in half, put a 50 there, split it in half again, or knock it down into 10 meter segments. As long as we have some idea of scale, that's great. And I'll show you what we do for our scales, but it's a little bit different. The other thing is we have tutorials here. So if you want to check those out, how to determine the scale ratio, I wouldn't worry too much about your scale ratio. Personally, I would just focus on creating a scale bar, okay? The scale ratio is only really meaningful if you print this out on the correct size paper. And then you can use a ruler that's based on that, but the scale bar is sort of a foolproof method. So if we go, there you go. So here's the student's example here. That's a nice little scale bar, right? And then they've done a ratio of 1 to 288. So I wouldn't even bother worrying about that personally. Just a bar is great. So I hope that answers your question, Marvin. Let me get my chat, which keeps disappearing on me. There we are. Yeah, does that make sense, Marvin? You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever works for you. Okay, that's great. All right. Let me just show you a couple examples that aren't student examples, that are examples that I'll show you one here. This is an example actually that I've just put together for a course that Jaan Designs and myself are putting on aesthetic design for ecological landscape. So we're creating template files for people to design on top of. And this is, I would almost say, a partial base plan because we have no information here, right? No site information. We're north up, and here's our scale bar at the bottom. So regardless of how this gets printed, we have an idea of scale. And we have 1 foot contours in the landscape. And we're showing significant trees. Now, it doesn't quite look right. That may be an earlier version I did. Yeah, I may not be able to find it right now. I thought I had it. Basically, I had oh, there we are. Here we go. I'll share that one instead. Yeah, so this is the same idea, different file, and there's a little legend here. So we have existing trees. We have, these are 1/2 foot contours. This is a very flat lot. And I pulled this off of LiDAR imagery, so I know they're, pretty accurate. We have property boundary, and we even have it, if we zoom in here, the property boundary is all set up with the length and the degrees, minutes, seconds here, which is really the angle. And then we have a little legend just showing lawn, concrete, and asphalt. And the services coming into this property are underground, and they're not shown here. So we do want you to do that. That's definitely a helpful thing to have. But that's, that's in a nutshell what we're after. And again, north up is the architectural standard for, I think it's pretty much global. I've seen Southern Hemisphere drawings that are north up. So the nice thing about this is when you start, if you start leaning towards setting all your drawings up this way, when you glimpse at it, the bottom of the drawing is that southern exposure, right? It's just an automatic. You really don't have to work too hard to figure that out. So that gives you a little idea, and I can show you one more here. There we go, and this is of a larger site. And there's no legend here, right? Because this base plan was really for our advantage as designers, so we know what we're looking at. But the lighter gray was gravel. This was asphalt. The house is right here, and the brown's typically planted areas, and the green is turf. So again, we have contour data here. And in this case, we had a drone survey done. So they are brilliant for mapping over. And then we try and provide a little bit of the contour data to show through there. That, of course, shows the neighboring property, and it's right on the water. And I won't get into the rest of this design, but we'll probably reference back to this through the course and just show you the different deliverables that we provide our students, our students, our clients. That's something we do get a question about. Because the template file in the course here is 150 odd pages, you know, do you provide that to your clients? Like, absolutely not. This is a pretty big example and it's only 12 sheets. Often it's much less. It really depends on the project. So Derek's got a question here. What do you use to georeference drone images? Well, these, we don't do our, we have somebody do our drone surveying for us. So all of this comes in georeferenced. And what happens with our software, we use Vectorworks Landmark. So when we grab this, this would be coming in as a shape file. So we import that file and it's georeferenced to the location on the drawing. And then when we add the image, it's the same thing. It just automatically places itself. It's wonderful. It's quite like, well, QGIS is like that, right? You import something, boom, it's in that, it's in its, well, we'll call it proper world spot. So we often do that. If we have to grab our own data, then we use QGIS. But I'm pretty good with that. I am not a GIS professional. So when we can, I prefer starting a drawing like this, because this gives you so much information. So you can imagine, and we'll zoom in here a bit. It's interesting. So you can see as we go in and in and in, we have a pretty good resolution here. We can pick up quite a bit. So from a mapping perspective, this is really easy. You know, there's a septic tank lid, right? So that's only 2 feet across, 24-inch. So very, very helpful. And it's not very expensive to do this property up in Canada here. It's probably, you know, it's probably $800-900, right? So our clients, that's an option for them. That's part of our package. They want that included. Makes it way easier. You can imagine if you had to go and map this manually, triangulating all those trees off of fixed points, it gets really, really difficult. So Derek has another question here. You've been playing with QGIS. Yeah, it's it's quite tricky. I'll show you one thing. We'll go back to where we were before. For those of you who are really interested in larger land design, because I know a number of you have some good sized properties. And one thing I've been doing the last 3 years is training with the Regrarian platform and as a planner member, and it's very different. Well, it's similar but different to permaculture design. It has 10 different layers that you go through a property and design. It's quite a unique, brilliant for farm design. And one of the things that we get to do is we get all these additional training modules, and we have 2 in here for QGIS as well as Google Earth. We got some grading. Yeah, there's all kinds of goodies in here that are sort of free add-ons. So this is how I've picked up some of my QGIS skills. And you can take this as a standalone. And if you wanted, for instance, Derek, if you're wanting to learn more about QGIS, this is a great educational platform here, because you can find what you're after really quick. So if you're importing data, some LiDAR data, and you want to know what's going on with that, you basically go down here and watch the video, and you can go step by step through it, because I don't know about you, but I have not found this very intuitive. So you definitely need to know certain steps if you're going to have success with it. Okay. So if we go back to our base plan here, and we look at all of the elements that we have talked about. So we want your title block to include all this info. We want a scale bar and a north arrow. And you want to show structure. So for those of you who have, say, property that doesn't have a building on it, because that can happen, right? Your project site may not be developed yet. What we'd like you to do is place a structure, a proposed building footprint where you basically see that going in your drawing. And then, as you'll see as we go ahead, I believe it's lesson number 3 when we get into, well, let's see here. I can't remember which lesson it is. That's awful. We're going to do a sector map, sector compass, as well. So with that, we want to also look at zones. So zone map. So having a central hub for human activity is an important step in this process. So you'd want to put some proposed structure in place. And what else? So roads and pathways and utilities, whether they're underground or overhead, contour lines. So again, if you can't get your contour lines in right away, do keep in the back of your mind, you're going to need those as we go forward into lesson 5. Yeah, and then all these other existing vegetation. I usually stick with significant existing vegetation. I don't put any, herbaceous plants on a drawing. We'll typically go through and document all the existing vegetation, but from a base plan perspective, we just want to get the larger material in there. And any easement. So that's important because there are a number of properties that we've been involved with where you might have a hydro or a sewer easement. And that's good to know because you should, that's still your client's property, but there's an easement either for accessing above ground utilities or below ground. So you certainly wouldn't want to build anything permanent within an easement area. I've done that. Well, not permanent. I'm years ago, we built our first home. We built a landscape in the front, and it was a beautiful little courtyard area. I had some soft landscaping on the roadside, and sure enough, sewer line broke, and they dug the whole boulevard up all the way down our street, and had to remove all the plant material, which fortunately was during the dormant season. But yeah, so you want to so moving plants is no big deal, but if you'd had a patio or some other hard surface or even a fence over top of it, yeah, you're risking some disappointment there.
Jamie, I got a quick question. This is David
Sure.
Lemus. So on a property site, I have like roughly 15, 16 acres. Do you want like a zoom in version? Because it's like I have a hard time thinking of the scale and of like the roof lines and where the watersheds and stuff like that. Of the actual like project site, like my house and all of the sheds and stuff around it. Because when I do the 16 acres, it's just so tiny in the scale bar that it doesn't feel like I can put all the detail that like some of the examples that you've showed us have such nice detail. And I would have to zoom in just specifically on the house site in order for me to get the detail like the water lines, the wells, and all the septic tank and leach field and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Or should I do it in a very small version of it? Because it feels like AutoCAD, I can do that in AutoCAD because I can zoom in on everything.
Yeah.
But on the 15 acres, every time I try to like basically snap an image of it from Google Map and then transfer it, I have a harder time on it, trying to identify it because it's so small, and then the map gets really messy.
Yeah. I'm just gonna find one here for you to to show you. But that's a good question. And for your base plan, we definitely want to see the whole, right? Even if it was 100 acres and you're only going to design, because that's what's happened to us before. Say you're only going to really focus on a few acres of that, we still want the overall. And then as we go through some of the exercises, you'll probably want to just include a certain, we'll call it a design boundary.
Okay.
But you see, within your property, you definitely want to be able to identify resources, and they may be quite a ways away from your intended design space. So it's a good idea to include the whole thing. I'm just trying to find an example here of a 70-acre site we did, and I might not be able to do it easily.
Yeah, because I could think of, like everything on the land side of it, but like the utility side on
Yeah,
like how am I going to show that if I'm working at a larger scale? So then I was like thinking maybe I can zoom in and create just like a zoom in section of the house and show all utilities. The
you could,
easement's fairly easy for me to do because I know where the
sure.
easement lies and stuff like that. But then the small fine detail in the near the buildings is what I'm having a hard time picturing how to do.
Sure. Well, you know what you could do, and the design sheets that we have, aren't really optimal for this, but you could do a base plan showing your overall, and then just
Mhm.
have a little viewport with the zoomed in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Okay.
sounds like if you're using AutoCAD, that wouldn't be that's easy to do.
Hmm.
And then you're showing both. That's one option.
Okay. Well, I think I appreciate that because then I could just make basically another page and then so
Sure.
the first one will be the site map, then the bottom one will show utilities and stuff and a zoomed in picture of the house and area with everything else. If if you think that's okay.
Sure. Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm sorry I can't show you.
That's okay. Answers my question though. I was worried because I was like, man, if I have to drive into smaller details, I have a harder time with this big piece of land, especially working with one still image.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll try and find 20 years worth of files here. So yeah, I found it, but I don't see any of my design sheets. Well, I'll just look and I'll open up a file here and see if it yields something. Um, but yes, that's the way to do it. Just the overall, and then have a smaller viewport if that is doable for you. And you'll probably find that you continue that sequence through some of the design sheets, because as you can imagine, we're going to look at sector compass, which is kind of an overall of energies outside of the project site that influence it. So, sun and wind, and could be neighbors, could be noise. So that's where we want that big overall.
Thank you. I
Sorry,
think
I'm
that will work.
just waiting for software to load here. It may or may not. When I got Zoom on here, it seems to slow down everything. Yeah, we'll just see if this, I haven't seen this file for a long time. So we shall just see if it, all right. this file we did quite a while ago. And I can't see all my screen here. There we are. So in this instance, well, it's not very good. So you can see this is 72 acre site here. These are all the slope data, slope analysis. Don't have us. Well, that's getting close to a base plan here. So it is important, especially on this job. I mean, you can see we have a lot of easements in the dash lines. We have a roadway, a rail line, a river. So and 1 foot contours. So yeah, it gets tricky depicting it. So this is a 24 by 36 sheet, so it's a little easier to show bigger sites than I think the template files 11 by 17. So it's not too bad that way. Here is a legal survey of that property. So that's a great thing to start with as well. If somebody has that, they can trace over it and start from there. And you can see this setback with the rail. There's 2 of them here. And then they have an easement to access water, which is really peculiar. So no on-site water. They have to pull it from a little further away. But yeah, that's a larger. So I hope that has answered your question somewhat. And then we kind of put in macro views of where the location is, and then, do an overlay with Google Earth. And actually, we have a lot of data off of this site embedded into Google Earth Pro, which is this is what we would use to share some info with our clients so they could optimize that. But yeah, hopefully I answered your question there. All right. So we have a few minutes remaining. Does anybody have any questions at all? Anything they'd like to go over? It doesn't even have to be related to the base map. Could be, a lot of people like to talk about growing food, but we can do whatever you want. We got 5 minutes, or we call it an early day, whatever people, whatever works for people. I don't think I have any other examples here. I was going to show you. You know what I'll do, since we got a couple minutes, is we'll go back to this one example, and I'll just show you some of the deliverables that we provide people. And this is an example. It wouldn't necessarily relate to anything, but so after we put our base plans together, we traditionally do a sector map, which is not included here. But what we do is we divide our design process up into a number of different stages. So what we do initially is what we call a water layer, right? So when we get to lesson 5, we're going to be touching on this sort of stuff, where we have an understanding how water moves across the site. We have an understanding of impervious surfaces on the site, and a motivation to best utilize that valuable resource. So especially on this particular site, where it's unusual to have an acreage supplied by community water system. And, you know, there's good and bad with that. The good is it's, you know, obviously treated to Canadian drinking water standards. The downside is if we're in a dry weather conditions, that the community water service providers can decide to impose water restrictions. And that typically happens every year in and around where I live. So they wanted some water sovereignty, some water independence. So the main objective, the main goal at the beginning of the project was to capture water off of roof surfaces. They have some metal roof surface on a shop here, just shown here. I should get my little annotation tool. Yeah, so right here is a shop, and this is a big open gravel area. And then the house, of course, over here, and it has a number of different roof surfaces that we identified, the size of them, and they're all metal. So we know that the options for reusing it are great. We've done some calculations here, which I won't get into at the moment, but we've put some various scenarios together where we're collecting and storing 12,000 gallons. We're doing the same for 15,000. And both of these were off the shop roof. And then the bottom one here is we're expanding collection to the house as well. And then our storage is right here. So in this particular situation, we would have to store water from the shed into a little pump chamber and then push it over to storage. We could not gravity feed this, it wouldn't work. And these pump chambers were just small cisterns. So they're basically 575 gallon cisterns. So big enough to hold a reasonable volume and place a nice effluent pump in each of them. So I don't generally like doing this kind of thing where you have two, but you know, it's just the way it was when you have really flat area and you want to optimize collection. Then they've got pushed into this series of cisterns here, and these are 3,000 gallons. So obviously 4 or 12, and if we go with 5, then we're up to 15. And then we had some volume calculation here, how much volume that's coming off. And basically off the residence itself, we got a couple 100,000 liters. So, you know, we're kind of 45,000 gallons. Just very, very rough numbers there. And then I have our annual average rainfall down here. So, you know, this, and some cistern examples. The top one's the pump chamber. The bottom one is our 3,000 gallon storage. So that would be, I'm not going to go through too many of these because I do not want to muddy the waters for you guys either. You've got your base plan to worry about. But basically we do water, and then we do what we call access. So that's going to be all our walkways, patios, retaining structure. And here they wanted a greenhouse, so we're going to put a passive solar greenhouse, and then we're having a little roof behind it, and we're going to stick all the cisterns in under cover behind this area. And then he wanted to put solar panels on the roof because there is some challenge with some of the power for this space. We had an expanded parking area with an infiltration swale because the slope is taking all this water off this hard surface, and we wanted to send it back into the landscape. And then we have patio and entry here. So yeah, that just gives you, those are 2 of the layers, and I won't spend much time on the third here, but this is into soil. So we're into that soft landscape. And you can see they all overlay, and we like to gray out previous layers so we can, easily identify what's new. And then they all sort of mush together here and overlay onto one another. And then that is what, and what we do is actually we present, every time we finish a layer, we'll present that on Zoom with our client. And then look, we'll look for feedback, but we don't really need feedback until we get to this initial concept. And then our client comes back to us. And this is actually the final concept. This label is incorrect, but it is the final. So this is after all the adjustments have been made. And the client decided to just have one pump chamber over here. So basically cutting collection potential down. And then instead of growing food, they're going to have just a naturalistic planting here. And yeah, this is what we went with. And then after that, especially on acreage, we'll start to look at details. So we got into a planting plan here, which this is what we call a planting palette. So we show our clients potentially what we could put in the various areas, right? Because we have no problem editing these layers, but when we get into planting schemes, we will not edit these. So because it's too much of a domino effect. If one item gets replaced or a series of items within the bed, it shoves everything off potentially. So what appears to be a small edit can really unravel into a large one. So what we do is we say, hey, here's the plants that we're considering, and let us know if you're okay with that, or if you don't like certain ones, let us know, and we won't put them in. So then we get feedback on the list, and then we just produce a planting plan with a planting list and any other details here. We ended up going with this interesting product. It's called Core Grass. So this is a permeable parking area, but you can put trucks on it. It's a very durable, firm surface. And so that's what was going all along here. They wanted it to be green, so it's going to look like this, but they wanted it to be firm enough I personally wouldn't have done that, but this is what they wanted. So, it has I won't say green, but it's yeah, very difficult to install. So it's not something I would recommend people jump into. Everything sounds expensive. Yeah, there's no doubt of that. This was a expensive job. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just a snapshot. We'll get into these a little bit deeper in the course and got lots of examples to show you, but that's basically our process, how we step through it. And it's not what I would recommend everybody else do, it's just what we do. And I'm sure you're going to find when you get to the end of the course and you're wanting to just do more design work that you'll find your own version that works for you. Yeah, one thing to note here, Jill, you'll notice with our detail here on the soil layer, we've left out about half of the base plan, right? So if we go back, you can see the base plan there, but when we got to this point, we reduced it, right? So whenever we're showing the overall, we want the whole thing, but then when we only designed a very small portion of the whole property because it was existing Douglas fir forest, and there's nothing, no improvement to be seen there. So, okay. Well, I think we've about wrapped up for today. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to throw at me before we sign off today? Okay, well, looks like we're all good. And thank you very much for being part of today's meeting and really appreciate the excellent questions. Oh, one thing I did not do, I did earlier, just check our Q&A document here. Yeah, there wasn't any questions put on that, so no problem. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
are welcome, everybody. I really enjoy the Q&As. So next couple of weeks from now, we'll have another one. And I look forward to seeing your assignments next week. So if you have any challenges or troubles at all during the week and you need some help and you can't, you just can't work through it, just drop me a line and we'll make sure we point you in the right direction. All right. Okay, everybody, take care and have yourself a great week.
You.